Hi all, today we'll talk about Open Session in View in Springboot, also known as OSI View. There is a transitional pattern called session per request which ties persistent session and request lifecycle together. Spring also implements this pattern which is termed as Open Session in View. Whenever a request comes to a Spring application, Spring binds a persistent session to the request lifecycle. The session is managed by Open Session in View interceptor. And finally, when the request is completed, the session is closed by this interceptor. In Spring Boot 2.0 and above, OSIV is enabled by default. Today I will demonstrate what Open Session in View does with an example. So let me go to the example. So I will open the database console for H2, and here you can see I have created a table called person, and if we run the query, select start from person, right, then you can see there is one record whose id is 1, name is xyz. For now you can ignore phone number, I'm not using it in this example. Now let's go to the address table. In address tables you can see there's the address id 1, city Pune, and it is binded to the person table with the id as 1. So it's a foreign key relationship here. Now I will go to the workspace. I have already created a project. So if you see, right, in this project I have two entities. One is person. If you see, person is mapped to person table, and it has two attributes, that is id and name, and then it has one to many relationship with the address entity. And if you see, this address entity in this person class has configured as fetch type lazy. Now when we go to the address class, we can see we have again two fields mapped to the table, address id and city. Then I have created a repository that is bind to person entity, and the id is of type long. Then I have a controller. This controller is going to be used to expose an API which will get the person detail from the database. So if you see, I have created a method called getPerson. This getPerson method calls a service class that is called OSIV service, if you see here. And this service class use the repository to get the person detail from the database. Now you see in the controller class, right, I have called person.getAddresses after I am getting the person from service class. Sorry. Now if you go to the application properties file, right, I have explicitly mentioned this property. This says that open session right in view is disabled since it is marked as false. Now since this is disabled here, we will try to run this application and see what is happening. So I will restart my application. It's restarting. Now I will go to the postman and try to hit the request. I have requested the person with ID 1, and I got an internal server error occurred. Now you can see, right, here it is saying that could not write JSON, right, failed to lazily initialize a collection of role, that is person.addresses, could not initialize proxy, no session. So what happened here, right, after calling this repository, right, as soon as person is returned, the session is closed. And since the session is closed, when the object is returned to the controller and when we invoke get address, as it was lazy initialized, it tries to get a session and get the data from the database for address. But since there is no session available now, it returns returns this error. Now what we will do, we will go to the application properties and remove this or comment out this property. What it does, it will by default, since Spring is enabled with OSIV, so as soon as I will comment out it and restart, OSIV will be enabled. So let me restart. Okay, the server is started and you can see right here it is mentioned spring.jpa open in view is enabled by default, right? So we do not need to explicitly turn this property as true. Even if it is not there, it is enabled by default. Now I will go to the same postman request and try to resend it. See, just a second, let me see what's the problem is here. Let me restart the application. I have created some bean, right, which was causing this issue. Let me restart the application. Okay, again I will go and send the request, and this time you see we have retrieved the object from the database. Now again you can see I have invoked person.get address after coming out of the service class, and now we are not getting no session kind of error for lazy initialization. Why it is happening? Since we have enabled OSIV, now as soon as the request comes to the Springboot application, a session is bind to that request, and that is managed by open session in view interceptor, and it is not closed after the query is fired, but when the life cycle is completed for this request, then only that session is closed. So when here at line number 27 person.get address is invoked in the controller, the application is able to get the session and fires a query to retrieve the address from the database. So this is the concept of OSIV. Many of us believe this is really useful because it increases developer productivity, as in case of lazy initialization cases, right, there is nothing to be explicitly handled, but some of us feel right, and many of us feel that this is not a good pattern. The reason behind it is it can cause performance overhead. It can also result in exhausting the connection pool of the application. So if there are multiple requests coming together and each request is taking time to serve the application request, so it can block the connection and the entire. So if there are multiple requests coming together, it may cause the connection pool to be exhausted and slow down the application performance or even throw errors. So this is different views for OSIV. That's it for today. We will catch up with you in next lecture. Thank you.